Daeho Kim wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished checking the air filters in Section 12 of the massive ship called Stellar Harmony. The ship was so big that it took him 3 hours just to walk from one end to the other. 847 beings from 12 different alien species lived and worked on this floating city in space. Most of them were scientists studying how space radiation affected living things. Daeho was just a maintenance worker who fixed broken things and cleaned filters. The human had been working on the ship for 6 months now. He was one of only 15 humans among all the aliens. The Galactic Confederation had hired humans because they said humans were good at solving problems in new ways. Most aliens thought this was just a nice way of saying humans were too primitive to understand real science, but might be useful for simple tasks. Daeho did not mind this. He liked fixing things. He also liked watching how different alien species worked. The Zenthari looked like giant insects with 4 arms and moved in very exact patterns. The Vorthak were made of living crystal that changed colors when they thought hard about something. The Keth-Moran looked like muscular lizards who carried weapons everywhere they went. His best friend on the ship was Dr. Hye-Jin Park. She was a human scientist who studied alien biology. Unlike Daeho, the aliens respected her because she had many degrees and published research papers. She often ate meals with him in the human section of the dining hall. "How was your day fixing things?" Hye-Jin asked as she sat down with her food tray. "Same as always," Daeho replied. "The Vorthak engineers think their crystal computers can fix everything automatically. Then they call me when something breaks in a way their computers did not expect." Hye-Jin laughed. "They are very smart, but they do not like surprises. Everything has to follow their rules and patterns." "What about you? Any interesting alien biology today?" "I am studying how the Zenthari digest food. Their stomachs have 4 chambers, and each one processes different nutrients. It is very efficient, but also very complicated." As they talked, warning, lights began flashing red throughout the dining hall. A voice spoke in the common galactic language that all species learned. "All crew report to emergency stations. Core containment failure detected." This is not a drill. Daeho and Hye-Jin looked at each other with worry. Core containment failure meant problems with the fusion reactor that powered the entire ship. Without the reactor, they would have no power for life support, engines, or communication systems. They hurried to their assigned emergency stations. Daeho's station was in Maintenance Section C, near the engineering decks. When he arrived, he saw Chief Engineer Nexval and his team of Vorthak engineers working frantically at their crystal control panels. The crystals were flashing bright red and orange, which meant the Vorthak were very stressed. "What is the situation?" Captain Wolri's voice came through the communication system. The Zenthari captain always spoke in a calm, measured way even during emergencies. "The magnetic containment field around the fusion core is failing," Nexval replied. His crystal body was now flashing rapid patterns of red and yellow. "The failure is spreading through the entire containment matrix. At current rate of decay, we estimate complete failure in 72 hours. Can you repair it?" "We are analyzing the problem now. The failure pattern does not match any known scenarios in our databases. We will need time to develop a solution." Daeho watched as teams of Vorthak engineers ran diagnostics on every system connected to the fusion core. They worked with incredible speed and precision, their crystal fingers dancing across control panels faster than human eyes could follow. But as hours passed, their flashing colors showed increasing frustration. The ship's AI began providing regular updates. Containment field stability at 85% and falling. Estimated time to critical failure, 68 hours, 37 minutes. Other alien species tried to help. The Zenthari brought their methodical approach, checking every system, component against detailed technical manuals. The Alkari, who looked like large birds with metal talons, used their pattern recognition abilities to search for clues in the sensor data. The ethereal Taksu floated through the engineering sections, using their energy-based senses to detect problems that physical instruments might miss. But nothing worked. Each species applied their own advanced knowledge and technology, but the fusion core continued to deteriorate. The magnetic field that kept the superheated plasma contained was becoming weaker and more unstable with each passing hour. Containment field stability at 78%. the AI announced. Estimated. Time to critical failure, 59 hours, 12 minutes. Daeho spent most of his time staying out of the way. His job during emergencies was to help with basic maintenance tasks that the engineers were too busy to handle. He changed air filters, checked pressure seals, and made sure all the diagnostic equipment had enough power. It was simple work, but he noticed things while he did it. The fusion core was not just one machine. It was a combination of technologies from many different species, all working together. The magnetic containment system was built by the Vorthak, using their crystal-based field generators. The plasma injection system came from Zenthari Precision Engineering. The monitoring sensors were made by the Alkari using their advanced pattern detection methods. 3 other species had contributed different components. As Daeho moved through the engineering sections, he started to see something strange. The containment field was not failing randomly. There was a pattern to the way. It weakened and strengthened. It reminded him of waves in water, but very complex waves that changed frequency and amplitude in regular cycles. He mentioned this to one of the Vorthak engineers. "The field fluctuations follow a harmonic pattern," he said. The crystal engineer flashed a brief pattern of dismissive blue. "Human, the containment field fluctuations are chaotic and unpredictable. Our analysis shows no harmonic patterns. Please continue with your assigned maintenance tasks." Daeho went back to his work, but he kept watching the sensor displays whenever he passed them. The more he looked, the more convinced he became that there was a pattern. It was not a simple pattern like a heartbeat or a radio signal. It was complex, with multiple frequencies overlapping and interfering with each other. "Containment field stability at 68%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 43 hours, 55 minutes. The alien engineers were becoming desperate. Captain Wolry called a meeting of all senior staff. Daeho was not invited, but he could hear parts of the discussion through the communication system. "We have tried every standard repair procedure," Chief Engineer Nexval reported. "The containment failure appears to be caused by a cascade effect in the magnetic field matrix, but we cannot identify the root cause." "What about replacing the damaged components?" Captain Wolry asked. "We have replaced 17 field generators and recalibrated the entire injection system. The failure pattern continues unchanged. Could this be sabotage? Security Chief Biola has scanned for sabotage. All systems show normal operational signatures. This appears to be a technical failure, not deliberate interference." Dr. Somin, the chief science officer from the Alkari species, spoke next. "Our pattern analysis shows the failure is spreading through quantum entanglement effects in the containment matrix. However, the specific mechanism is unlike anything in our scientific databases." Daeho continued his maintenance work while listening to the reports. The aliens were approaching the problem like they approached everything else. Systematically, methodically, using established procedures and known science. They were trying to fix the fusion core the same way they would fix any other machine. But this was not like any other machine. This was a hybrid system that combined technologies from multiple species. Maybe it was failing in a way that no single species could understand, because no single species had built it. "Containment field stability at 57%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 36 hours, 18 minutes. As his shift ended, Daeho made his way back to the human quarters. He was tired, but his mind kept thinking about the pattern he had seen in the containment field fluctuations. He had tried to tell the engineers about it, but they had dismissed him as a primitive human who did not understand advanced physics. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was seeing patterns that were not really there. But something deep in his mind told him that the pattern was important. He had always been good at seeing connections between things that seemed unrelated. It was why he was good at fixing complicated machines, even though he did not have advanced engineering degrees. The ship felt different now. There was a tension in the air that had not been there before. 847 beings were trapped in deep space with a failing reactor and no way to call for help. If the fusion core failed completely, they would drift in the darkness until their life support systems ran out of power. Daeho fell asleep thinking about waves and patterns, and the strange way that different technologies could interfere with each other in unexpected ways. Daeho woke up early the next morning with an idea forming in his mind. He had dreamed about waves again, but this time the waves were not in water. They were in the magnetic fields around the fusion core, and they were fighting against each. other like currents in a river meeting a strong wind. The ship felt quieter than usual as he made his way to the engineering sections. Most of the alien crew had worked through the night trying to fix the containment field. The Vorthak engineers looked exhausted, their crystal bodies flickering with dim, tired colors instead of their usual bright patterns. Containment field. Stability at 49%, the AI announced as Daeho began his morning maintenance routine. Estimated time to critical failure, 28 hours, 43 minutes. Chief Engineer Nex Val was explaining the situation to a group of Zenthari technicians. We have isolated the failure to specific nodes in the containment matrix, but every time we repair one node, the failure spreads to adjacent areas. It is as if the magnetic field itself is rejecting our repairs. Daeho cleaned sensor arrays and checked power connections while he listened. The engineers were still thinking about the problem as individual components failing one by one. They were trying to fix each broken part without understanding why the parts were breaking in the first place. During his break, Daeho went to the main engineering display room. This was where all the sensor data from the fusion core was shown, on large screens. The room was usually restricted to senior engineers, but during the emergency, normal security protocols were relaxed. He stood in front of the main display screen and watched the patterns of magnetic field strength change over time. The alien saw chaos and random fluctuations. But Daeho saw something different. He saw 3 separate wave patterns overlapping each other, creating a complex interference pattern that looked random unless you knew what to look for. "You should not be here, human," said a voice behind him. Daeho turned to see Chief Science Officer Tak-Su floating in the doorway. The ethereal being was made of pure energy and looked like a glowing cloud of blue light with sparks of electricity running through it. "I am sorry," Daeho said. "I was just trying to understand what is happening to the containment field. This is not something a maintenance worker can understand. These are complex quantum field interactions that require advanced training in theoretical physics." Daeho nodded and started to leave, but then stopped. "Chief Science Officer, may I ask you something?" Tak-Su's energy patterns shifted to show mild irritation. "What is it? When you built the fusion core, did anyone check how the different alien technologies would interact with each other?" "Of course. Every component was tested extensively before installation. All systems passed compatibility assessments. But did you test them during long space travel, with cosmic radiation affecting the ship for months?" Tak-Su's energy patterns shifted to show confusion. "Cosmic radiation is accounted for in all our shield calculations. The ship's hull provides adequate protection for all sensitive equipment. What about the areas where different shielding systems overlap? Where Vorthak shields meet Zenthari shields meet Alkari shields?" The energy being paused for a moment. "The shield integration points are covered by multiple layers of protection. They are the most secure areas of the ship." Daeho nodded again and left the display room. But his mind was working on the problem. Multiple layers of protection meant multiple types of shielding technology working in the same space. What if cosmic radiation affected different shielding materials in different ways? What if after months of travel, some types of shielding had degraded more than others? He spent the rest of his shift thinking about the problem while he worked. The fusion core used magnetic containment fields generated by Vorthak crystal technology. The navigation array used Zenthari precision field generators to detect gravitational anomalies. The structural integrity sensors used Alkari quantum field detection to monitor hull stress. All 3 systems used magnetic fields. All 3 systems were located in different parts of the ship with different types of radiation shielding. And all 3 systems sent their data through the ship's main computer network, which meant their signals could potentially interfere with each other. "Containment field stability at 38%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 19 hours, 17 minutes. During the evening meal break, Daeho found Hye-jin in the human dining area. She looked tired and worried. "How are the repairs going?" she asked. "They are not going well. The engineers keep fixing things, but the problem keeps getting worse." "Doctor, Somin told me they think it might be a design flaw in the original fusion core construction. But that does not make sense because the same design works fine on hundreds of other ships." Daeho ate his food slowly, thinking. "Hye-jin, what makes this ship different from other ships?" "Well, it is a research vessel, so it has more advanced sensor arrays than most ships. and it carries a much more diverse crew with technology from many different species. More diverse technology means more potential for interference between systems. Hyejin looked at him with interest. What kind of interference? I think the navigation array is creating harmonic interference with the fusion containment field. But only because the cosmic radiation has degraded some of the shielding between them. That sounds very specific. Do you have evidence for this theory? Not exactly evidence, but I have been watching the patterns in the containment field fluctuations. They match the frequency cycles of the navigation array scans. After dinner, Daeho made his way to a maintenance access tunnel that ran between the fusion core section and the navigation array section. These tunnels were normally used for routine equipment access, but during the emergency, they were mostly empty. He brought a portable sensor unit that could detect electromagnetic field fluctuations. As he moved through the tunnel, he took readings, at regular intervals. The sensor unit was simple compared to the advanced equipment the engineers used, but it could detect basic field strength and frequency information. What he found confirmed his suspicions. In the areas where the tunnel passed between different shielding sections, the electromagnetic readings showed interference patterns. The navigation array was sending out scanning pulses every 37 seconds. The fusion containment field was fluctuating with harmonic frequencies that matched those pulses, but the interference was only happening in specific locations where the shielding had been weakened by months of cosmic radiation exposure. The degradation was so gradual that the ship's automated monitoring systems had not detected it as a problem. Daeho spent several hours in the tunnels, taking readings and mapping the areas where interference was strongest. By the time he finished, he had a clear picture of what was happening. The navigation array was sending out electromagnetic pulses that were interfering with the fusion containment field, but only in areas where radiation had weakened the shielding between the two systems. Containment field stability at 29%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 14 hours, 52 minutes. The solution was not complicated once you understood the problem. Instead of trying to repair the containment field directly, he needed to eliminate the interference that was causing it to fail. This could be done by rerouting power through auxiliary conduits to create a counter-harmonic that would cancel out the navigation array interference. But implementing the solution would require access to primary control systems that were restricted to senior engineering staff, and the alien engineers would need to approve any major changes to ship systems. Daeho made his way to the main engineering section. Chief Engineer Nexval was there with his team, still working frantically to stabilize the containment field. The Vorthax crystal body was flashing rapid patterns of red and orange, indicating extreme stress. Chief Engineer, Daeho said, I think I know what is causing the containment field failure. Nexval's crystal patterns shifted to show annoyance. Human, we do not have time for amateur theories. Please return to your assigned duties. The navigation array is creating harmonic interference with the containment field. The interference is only happening because cosmic radiation has degraded the shielding between the two systems. That is impossible. Our calculations show that proper shielding eliminates any possibility of system interference. Your calculations assume the shielding maintains its original effectiveness, but different shielding materials degrade at different rates when exposed to cosmic radiation. Another Vorthak engineer turned toward them. Even if such interference existed, which it does not, the ship's automated systems would have detected and compensated for it. Not if the degradation happened slowly over several months. The automated systems only check for major changes, not gradual shifts in baseline readings. Chief Engineer Nexval's crystal patterns showed impatience. Human, your maintenance duties do not include theoretical analysis of fusion containment systems. Please leave this work to qualified engineers. Daeho felt frustrated, but he also understood why the aliens dismissed his ideas. He was not a trained engineer, and he did not have advanced degrees in physics, but he also knew he was right about the interference problem. Daeho waited until the night shift began before making his move. Most of the senior engineers were resting after working for nearly 40 hours straight. The fusion core was still being monitored, but only by a skeleton crew of technicians who were focused on emergency containment procedures. He made his way to Auxiliary Control Station 7, which had access to both the navigation array and the power distribution systems. His maintenance clearance allowed him into the area, but not into the control systems themselves. However, Daeho had learned a few things about ship security during his 6 months aboard. Emergency protocols often overrode normal access restrictions. Containment. Field stability at 18%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 9 hours, 47 minutes. The time was running out. If his theory was wrong, he would probably be arrested for tampering with critical ship systems. If his theory was right but his solution failed, the ship would still lose power and everyone would die. But if he did nothing, everyone would definitely die when the fusion core failed. Daiho connected his portable sensor unit to the auxiliary control station and began analyzing the power flow patterns. Just as he had suspected, the navigation array was drawing power in regular pulses that created electromagnetic fluctuations throughout the ship's power grid. These fluctuations were normally filtered out by the ship's shielding, but months of cosmic radiation had weakened the filtering effectiveness. The solution required rerouting power through backup conduits to create a counter signal that would cancel out the navigation interference. It was like tuning a musical instrument by matching frequencies and harmonics, but instead of sound waves, he was working with electromagnetic fields that could kill everyone if he made a mistake. He spent 2 hours carefully calculating the proper frequency and amplitude for the counter signal. The mathematics were complex, but the basic principle was simple. Every wave could be canceled by an equal and opposite wave. He just needed to generate the right opposing signal at the right time. Containment field stability at 14%, the AI announced. Estimated time to critical failure, 7 hours, 12 minutes. Daiho began implementing his solution. First, he rerouted power from non-essential systems to the auxiliary conduits. This would provide enough energy to generate the counter signal without affecting life support or other critical functions. Then he programmed the auxiliary power systems to generate electromagnetic pulses that would exactly oppose the navigation array interference. The changes had to be made gradually to avoid triggering automatic safety systems that would shut down the modifications. He adjusted power levels by small amounts, waiting several minutes between each change to see how the containment field responded. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The containment field continued to weaken at the same rate as before. But after an hour of careful adjustments, Daiho began to see small improvements in field stability. The fluctuations were becoming less severe and more predictable. Containment field stability at 13%, the AI announced. Rate of decay decreasing. Estimated time to critical failure, 8 hours, 26 minutes. The estimated time had actually increased. His solution was working, but very slowly. He continued making adjustments, fine-tuning the frequency and timing of the counter signal to better match the navigation interference patterns. 2 hours later, the improvement became more obvious. The containment field was not just declining, more slowly. It was actually beginning to stabilize. The chaotic fluctuations that had been driving the aliens to desperation were smoothing out into regular, manageable patterns. Containment field stability at 16%. The AI announced. Rate of decay continuing to decrease. Estimated time to critical failure, 12 hours, 18 minutes. The field stability was improving faster than it had been declining. If the trend continued, the containment field would stabilize completely within a few more hours. But Daiho knew he had to be careful. Too much counter signal could create new interference problems. Too little would not solve the original issue. As he worked, he heard footsteps in the corridor outside the auxiliary control station. Someone was coming to check on the systems. He quickly saved his work and tried to look like he was performing routine maintenance tasks. Dr. He-jin appeared in the doorway. Daiho? What are you doing here so late? I could not sleep, he said. I wanted to check some of the auxiliary power systems to make sure they are ready if the main systems fail. She looked at the control displays with a puzzled expression. These readings look different from what I saw earlier today. The power distribution patterns have changed. I made some minor adjustments to improve efficiency. Minor adjustments that are stabilizing the fusion core containment field? Daiho realized there was no point in trying to hide what he had done. Hyjin was smart enough to figure out what was happening just by looking at the data. I found the source of the containment. Field problems, he said. The navigation array is interfering with the magnetic containment system. I created a counter signal to cancel out the interference. Hyjin stared at him in amazement. You solved the fusion core crisis? By yourself? Using auxiliary control systems? The aliens would not listen to my theory about system interference. I had to prove it by implementing a solution, containment field stability at 19% and rising, the AI announced. Fusion core approaching normal operational parameters. Within minutes, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. But these were not emergency alarms. They were alerts notifying the crew that the crisis was ending. The fusion core was stabilizing faster than anyone had thought possible. Chief Engineer Nex Val arrived at the auxiliary control station 15 minutes later, followed by Captain Wool-Ree and several other senior officers. The Vorthax crystal body was flashing patterns of confusion and disbelief. "What has happened here?" Captain Wool-Ree demanded in her calm, measured voice. The human implemented an unauthorized solution to the containment field crisis, Chief Engineer Nex Val reported. His crystal patterns showed a mixture of anger and amazement. According to these readings, his modifications have completely stabilized the fusion core. Captain Wool-Ree turned to Dae-Ho. "Explain what you have done." Dae-Ho described his theory about navigation array interference and how he had used counter-harmonic signals to eliminate the problem. As he talked, he could see the alien officers, exchanging glances of surprise and confusion. "This solution should not work," Chief Science Officer Taksu said, his energy patterns flickering with uncertainty. "Our calculations showed no possibility of system interference." "Your calculations assumed the shielding maintained constant effectiveness," Dae-Ho replied. "But cosmic radiation degrades different shielding materials at different rates. After months of space travel, some types of shielding became less effective than others." Dr. Somin, the Alkari science officer, studied the sensor data with her sharp bird-like eyes. "The human's readings show clear evidence of electromagnetic interference in specific ship sections. Our instruments detected this interference, but our analysis programs classified it as normal background fluctuation." "How did a maintenance worker identify a problem that our most advanced analysis systems missed?" Chief Engineer Nex Val asked. "I looked for patterns instead of following standard procedures," Dae-Ho said. "Sometimes problems happen in ways that do not match the rules in computer databases." "Containment field stability at 24% and rising," the AI announced. "Fusion core operating within normal parameters. Emergency status terminated. The B crisis was over." For the first time in 3 days, the ship was no longer in danger of losing power and drifting helplessly in space. But instead of celebration, the alien officers seemed deeply disturbed by what had happened. "We must analyze this incident thoroughly," Captain Wool-Ree said. "I want complete reports from all departments on how our standard procedures failed to identify this problem. More importantly," Chief Science Officer Taksu added, "we need to understand how a human was able to solve a problem that stumped our most qualified engineers." Over the following days, teams of alien scientists began studying everything about Dae-Ho's solution. They interviewed him repeatedly, asking detailed questions about his thought processes and problem-solving methods. They scanned his brain with advanced medical equipment to understand how human neural patterns differed from alien minds. Dr. Somin became particularly interested in human cognitive abilities. "Your species processes information in fundamentally different ways than any known galactic civilization," she told Dae-Ho during one of many interviews. "Where we analyze data systematically within established frameworks, humans appear to make intuitive connections across unrelated information sets." "I just looked for patterns," Dae-Ho said. "It seemed obvious that the navigation array and containment field were interfering with each other. But it was not obvious to us, despite having far more advanced knowledge of physics and engineering. This suggests that human minds possess unique problem-solving capabilities that could revolutionize galactic technology." Chief Engineer Nex Val spent hours studying Dae-Ho's sensor readings and mathematical calculations. "The human solution is elegantly simple," he admitted to his fellow Vorthak engineers. 3 weeks after the fusion core incident, Dae-Ho discovered that being famous was much worse than being ignored. Every day brought new requests for interviews, cognitive tests, and brain scans from different alien species who wanted to understand how human minds worked. What had started as scientific curiosity was becoming something more invasive and troubling. Dr. Somin was the most persistent researcher. The Alkari scientist had established a daily schedule of tests designed to map human neural patterns during problem-solving activities. Each morning, Daeho was required to report to her laboratory for 2 hours of cognitive evaluation. Today, we will test your pattern recognition abilities using quantum field data, Dr. So-min announced as Daeho entered the lab. Her bird-like features showed excitement, but her metal talons clicked nervously against her data tablet. Daeho sat in the testing chair surrounded by sensors that monitored his brain activity. On the screen in front of him appeared complex wave patterns that looked like random noise to most observers. But as he studied the data, he began to see underlying structures and relationships that the testing equipment recorded as unusual neural pathway activation. Fascinating, Dr. So-min muttered as she watched the brain scan displays. Your neural networks are literally rewiring themselves in real time to process new information patterns. This neuroplasticity is completely unknown among galactic species. Is that unusual? Daeho asked. Extremely unusual. Most intelligent species develop fixed neural pathways optimized for specific types of thinking. Vorthak minds excel at systematic analysis. Xanthari minds excel at precise pattern matching. Kethmoran minds excel at tactical assessment. But human minds appear to reshape themselves continuously to handle whatever problems they encounter. After the testing session, Dr. So-min walked with Daeho toward the dining hall. I must ask you something important, she said. Would you be willing to undergo more detailed neural mapping procedures? We could learn so much about cognitive adaptation if we could study your brain structure at the cellular level. What would that involve? Nothing harmful. We would use advanced scanning technology to map every neural connection in your brain. The process takes about 6 hours and requires complete immobilization to get accurate readings. Daeho felt uncomfortable with the idea but did not want to seem uncooperative. I will think about it. Excellent. I will schedule the procedure for next week. As they walked, they passed Chief Engineer Nexval and 2 other Vorthak engineers, who were having an intense discussion. Their crystal bodies were flashing rapid patterns of orange and yellow, indicating excitement mixed with frustration. The human solution to the fusion core crisis has implications far beyond ship repair, one engineer was saying. If we could understand and replicate human cognitive processes, we could revolutionize our approach to engineering problems throughout the galaxy. But how do we study something that changes constantly? Another engineer asked. Human neural patterns are too chaotic and unpredictable to analyze using our standard methods. Perhaps we need to study human brains directly, Nexval suggested. Neural tissue samples could provide insights that external scanning cannot achieve. Daeho stopped walking. Neural tissue samples meant they wanted to remove pieces of his brain for study. He felt a chill of fear run down his spine. Dr. So-min noticed his reaction. Do not worry about their discussions, she said quickly. They are just theorizing about research possibilities. No one would suggest actual tissue sampling without extensive ethical review. But over the following days, Daeho began to notice more conversations about human cognitive research. The discussions were becoming more detailed and more focused on practical applications rather than pure science. Instead of trying to understand how human minds worked, the aliens were starting to discuss how human thinking could be replicated or enhanced for their own use. Research Director Hyun-soo, a Xanthari administrator who managed the ship's scientific programs, called a meeting with all the human crew members. The 15 humans gathered in the small conference room normally used for maintenance briefings. As you know, Hyun-soo began in his precise, measured voice, recent events have demonstrated that human cognitive abilities possess unique characteristics of great interest to the galactic scientific community. We have an opportunity to contribute to groundbreaking research that could benefit all species. Dr. Gildong, the human psychologist who provided mental health support for the human crew, raised his hand. What kind of research are you proposing? Comprehensive. Neural mapping and cognitive analysis. We want to understand exactly how human minds process information differently from other galactic species. This research could lead to new approaches to problem-solving, engineering design, and scientific discovery. That sounds reasonable, said one of the human technicians. How much time would this research require? The initial phase would involve daily testing sessions for all human crew members. More detailed procedures would be scheduled based on individual results and research needs. Dr. Hai-jin looked concerned. What do you mean by more detailed procedures? Advanced brain imaging, neural pathway mapping, and cognitive enhancement. Experiments. All procedures would be completely safe and designed to benefit both human subjects and galactic science. Dr. Gildong leaned forward in his chair. Director Hyun-soo, are you saying that participation in this research would be mandatory for human crew members? Not mandatory, but strongly encouraged. Human cognitive abilities represent a unique resource that could solve countless problems throughout the galaxy. The needs of trillions of galactic citizens must be considered alongside individual preferences. After the meeting, the human crew members gathered in Dr. Gildong's office to discuss what they had heard. The psychologist looked troubled as he addressed the group. I do not like the direction this research is taking, he said. They are starting to treat us as experimental subjects rather than crew members with equal rights. But the research could help people, argued one of the technicians. If understanding human thinking can solve galactic problems, maybe we should cooperate. The issue is not cooperation, Dr. Hyun said. The issue is consent and respect for our autonomy. They are talking about mandatory participation and procedures that become more invasive over time. Daeho had been quiet during the discussion, but now he spoke up. Dr. Somin wants me to undergo detailed neural mapping next week. She says it is completely safe, but she also mentioned that some research might require neural tissue samples. Dr. Gildong's expression became very serious. Neural tissue samples means they want to remove pieces of your brain for study. That is not safe or acceptable under any circumstances. But they said it was just theoretical discussion. Theoretical discussions can become real procedures very quickly when the research subjects have no power to refuse. Over the next few days, the requests for human participation in cognitive research became more frequent and more insistent. Dr. Somin reminded Daeho daily about his scheduled neural mapping session. Chief Engineer Nex Val suggested that Daeho could contribute to important engineering research by allowing detailed brain scans during problem-solving activities. Research Director Hyun-soo emphasized the potential benefits to galactic civilization if humans would cooperate fully with the research program. But the requests were starting to sound less like requests and more like demands. When one human technician expressed reluctance to participate in daily cognitive testing, Director Hyun-soo reminded him that his continued employment aboard the ship depended on his cooperation with scientific research activities. Dr. Gildong documented these conversations and shared his concerns with Dr. Hee-jin. They are using our employment status to coerce participation in medical research, he said. This violates every principle of informed consent and ethical research practice. What can we do about it? Dr. Hyun asked. We need to contact human authorities and report what is happening. But communication with Earth takes weeks due to our distance from inhabited systems. In the meantime, we need to protect ourselves from increasingly invasive research demands. The situation reached a crisis point when Security Chief Beol-ah appeared at Daeho's quarters one evening. The muscular Kethmaran warrior stood in the doorway holding an official-looking document. Daeho Kim, she said in her gruff military voice, you are required to report to Medical Research Laboratory 7 tomorrow morning for comprehensive neural evaluation procedures. Required? Daeho asked. What if I refuse? Refusal to participate in essential research activities is considered a violation of crew regulations. Violators can be confined to quarters pending disciplinary review. This is not about crew regulations. This is about forcing me to undergo medical procedures without my consent. Beol-ah's expression softened slightly. Human, I do not like this situation any more than you do. But my orders come from Captain Wol-ri and Research Director Hyun-soo. They consider human cognitive research to be essential for ship safety and galactic security. Ship safety? The ship is working fine now. The fusion core is stable, and all systems are operating normally. They argue that understanding human problem-solving abilities is necessary to prevent future crises. If humans can solve problems that alien engineers cannot, Daeho did not sleep that night. He spent hours walking through the maintenance tunnels of the ship, thinking about what would happen in the morning. He could submit to the neural tissue sampling and hope that the aliens would treat him humanely afterward. He could try to resist and face whatever punishment Security Chief Beol-ah would impose, or he could try a different approach entirely. As dawn approached, he made his decision. Instead of reporting to Medical Research Laboratory 7, he went. to the main engineering section where Chief Engineer Nex Val was beginning his morning shift. The Vorthax crystal body was glowing with calm blue patterns, suggesting he was in a good mood. "Chief Engineer," Deho said, "I want to make you an offer." Nex Val's crystal patterns shifted to show mild curiosity. "What kind of offer, human?" "You want to understand how human minds solve problems. I am willing to teach you, but as a partner, not as an experimental subject." "Teach us? How can you teach cognitive processes that you perform unconsciously?" "The same way you learn to engineer crystal field generators, through practice, explanation, and shared experience. I will work with your engineers on real problems and explain my thought processes as I work. But I will do this as an equal team member, not as a laboratory specimen." Nex Val considered this proposal. "Research Director Hyun Soo has ordered comprehensive neural analysis. Your cooperation with that research is not optional." "Then let me demonstrate the difference between cooperation and coercion," Deho said. "Give me one engineering problem that your team cannot solve. Let me work on it with your people as equals. If my approach teaches you nothing useful, I will submit to whatever research procedures you want. But if my approach helps your engineers think differently, then you know that cooperation works better than forced experimentation." Before Nex Val could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not emergency alarms this time, but priority. Alerts indicating that an important message was being received from galactic authorities. Captain Wolry's voice came through the communication system. "All senior staff report to the bridge immediately. We have received a priority transmission from Earth and the Galactic Confederation Council." Deho felt a mixture of hope and fear. Had someone on Earth learned about the situation aboard the bow Stellar Harmony? Or was this message unrelated to the human crew's problems? An hour later, Dr. Hee Jin found Deho in the engineering section. Her face showed excitement and relief. The transmission was from Ambassador Min Ho, the human representative. "To the Galactic Council," she said. "Somehow he learned about the forced research program. He has filed formal complaints with multiple galactic authorities." "How did he find out what was happening here?" "Dr. Gildong managed to send a message through the ship's communication array 3 days ago. It took time to reach Earth and for Ambassador Min Ho to contact the proper authorities, but he has been working on this problem since he received our alert." The effects of the ambassador's intervention became apparent quickly. Within hours, Captain Wolry received direct orders from Admiral Jayan of the Kethmoran Fleet Command to suspend all research activities involving human crew members pending a formal investigation. Research Director Hyun Soo was furious about the intervention. "This research could benefit trillions of galactic citizens," he argued during an emergency staff meeting. "Human cognitive abilities represent a unique resource that should be studied comprehensively for the greater good." "The greater good does not justify forced medical experimentation on sentient beings," Admiral Jayon replied through the communication link. Her Kethmoran military training emphasized honor and ethical conduct even in difficult situations. "All intelligent species have the right to control what happens to their own bodies and minds." Chief Medical Officer Yuri, a Vorthax scientist who specialized in interspecies medical ethics, supported the Admiral's position. "Proper research requires voluntary informed consent from all participants. Coercion invalidates both the ethical foundation and the scientific value of any research program." But the debate was far from over. Several alien species argued that human cognitive abilities were too valuable to leave unstudied. Chief Science Officer Tak Soo proposed compromise, approaches that would provide incentives for human participation while maintaining some research restrictions. "Perhaps we can offer humans advanced education, enhanced living conditions, or preferred work assignments in exchange for research cooperation," Tak Soo suggested. Dr. Gildong responded to this proposal with anger. "You are still treating humans as resources to be managed rather than as people with inherent rights. Offering rewards for research participation is just a more polite form of coercion." As the discussions continued, another crisis emerged that changed everything. The ship's environmental systems began showing signs of failure in the atmospheric recycling units. The problem was complex and involved interactions between biological waste processing, chemical filtration, and atmospheric composition management. The alien engineering teams tried their standard systematic approaches, But the environmental system was even more complicated than the fusion core. It involved living biological components that did not follow predictable mechanical patterns. After 2 days of analysis, they had made no progress towards solving the problem. Dr. He-jin suggested that this would be an ideal opportunity to test cooperative problem-solving approaches. Let Dae-ho work with your engineers as an equal partner, she proposed to Captain Woolry. If humans and aliens can solve this problem together, it proves that collaboration works better than forced research. Captain Woolry agreed to the experiment. Dae-ho was assigned to work with a mixed team of engineers from several species, but instead of being studied while he worked, he was treated as a full team member with equal authority to propose solutions and direct research activities. The collaborative approach was immediately different from anything the aliens had tried before. Instead of analyzing each system component separately, Dae-ho encouraged the team to look at the environmental system as a living ecosystem with complex interdependencies. The biological waste processors are not just machines, he explained to the Vorthak engineers. They are living organisms that respond to environmental changes in unpredictable ways. We need to think like biologists, not just engineers. Dr. So-min contributed her pattern recognition abilities to identify subtle changes in the biological components. Chief Engineer Nexval provided detailed technical knowledge about the mechanical systems. A Zenthari atmospheric specialist offered precise data about chemical interactions. Working together, the mixed species team discovered that the environmental crisis was caused by a gradual shift in the biological balance of the waste processing organisms. The shift was so slow that individual monitoring systems had not detected it as a problem, but over months of space travel, the biological components had evolved in ways that reduced their effectiveness. The solution required both biological and engineering approaches. They needed to rebalance the biological ecosystem while also modifying the mechanical systems to better support the evolved organisms. No single species could have developed this solution alone, but by combining different types of expertise and thinking approaches, they solved the problem in 3 days. More importantly, the alien engineers learned valuable lessons about human cognitive processes by working alongside Dae-ho rather than studying him in a laboratory. They discovered that human chaos thinking was not actually chaotic. It was a systematic approach to finding patterns and connections that formal analysis methods often missed. Human minds excel at synthesis, Chief Engineer Nexval reported to Captain Woolry. Where we analyze systems by breaking them into smaller components, humans analyze systems by looking for unexpected relationships between apparently unrelated elements. Can these synthesis techniques be taught to other species? Captain Woolry asked. Yes, but only through collaborative practice, not through neural tissue analysis. The human approach requires learning to think differently, not just copying human brain structures. The success of the collaborative environmental repair project changed the entire dynamic aboard the ship. Instead of treating humans as research subjects, the alien crew began treating them as valued colleagues with unique and useful skills. Research Director Hyun Soo remained convinced that more invasive research would provide better results, but he was overruled by Captain Woolry and the other senior officers. We have achieved better research outcomes through cooperation than we could have achieved through coercion, the captain declared. This collaborative approach will become our standard procedure for interspecies research. Dr. So-min established a new research program based on voluntary participation and equal partnership between human and alien researchers. Instead of studying human brains in isolation, she focused on documenting how mixed species teams could combine different cognitive approaches to solve complex problems. Dae-ho became the first human to hold a senior engineering position in the Galactic Fleet. His title was Synthesis Engineering Specialist, and his job was to work with alien engineers on problems that required creative approaches to system integration and problem solving.